Hi, we're Richard and Jackie from Early Retirement Wanderlust. A few weeks ago, we put out a video on how we made our decision to downsize as part of our early retirement process.
And after that video, we had so many questions from people asking about the practical side of living in a much smaller house. So in this video, we thought we would take you on a tour around the house and just talk about some of the pros, cons and practicalities of living in a much smaller house than our 3-bed family home that we moved from.
For those of you that are new to the channel, we're Richard and Jackie, and we made the decision to early retire 3 years ago. And part of that process, we sold our family home in Cheshire. It was a large 3-bed detached, and we moved to where we are today. And it's fair to say it hasn't always looked like this. We bought a small 2-up, 2-down renovation cottage in the middle of the Yorkshire Dales. It's a mid-terrace cottage. It's considerably smaller than what we had in our family home, and there have been certain challenges of moving here, but also certain benefits of moving here.
In our last video about downsizing, we talked more about how we actually made the decision for us to be able to move to the Yorkshire Dales and downsize, but this is more about the practicalities now.
We quite rightly, after the last video, had loads of questions from people who were really interested in the day-to-day practicalities and the pros and cons of moving to a much smaller house.
So in this video, we thought we'd spend the afternoon. We'll take you around our tiny little cottage, share with you some of the practicalities, how we store stuff, how we cope with such a small space, and how we deal with issues like when we have lots of family visiting us. So this is actually my favourite part of the house. Downstairs, we had a wall knocked through so that we could have our living space and the kitchen all in one. It has created this huge space that's wide, open, airy. It's really light. It's a really sociable place to be. When we are cooking, we can sit and chat with each other. I can be sitting listening to music on the sofa. Richard does most of the cooking in the house. And it's just such a pleasure to be down here. It wasn't always like that though.
When we first moved into the house, it was a 2-up, 2-down, and it was in pretty poor repair. It was very old-fashioned, so this back area of the house was the kitchen, and it just felt a little bit dark because there was only one window coming through into it, and then it led through into quite a nice, snug lounge area. But what we wanted to do was to just open that space up so that it just gave us that feeling of space downstairs. So in reality now, we're in a 1-down, 2-up cottage, but we just think the space works for us just how it is.
Before we knocked the wall through, the kitchen was quite a tiny, tight space, but by knocking it through, it has made it feel like we have a huge kitchen, when in reality, it is actually still quite tiny. What you see behind us is what you get. It has only got actually 10 units in it, and that includes one to house the dishwasher and one to house the washing machine. It's not got a huge amount of space, but when we moved and we downsized, we talked a lot about the fact that we decluttered a lot of our things. We just bought a new set of 8 of everything that just sits crockery in that cupboard, cutlery in there, and we don't need a lot of other things. We have kept a few bits of extra plates and bits and pieces upstairs under our bed for if we're entertaining, but that really isn't very often. And for such a small kitchen, it has everything that we need. Obviously, we've got the cooker and the oven on that side with the small kitchen unit area, but we did keep a wet side of the kitchen over here, so we've just got a very basic sink, washing machine, dishwasher, and yeah, it's a really comfortable, easy kitchen to use. It feels really big, but actually it's quite tiny.
So this is our small and yet perfectly formed dining space because it fits our needs perfectly for the vast majority of the time. You can see at the moment it's been taken over by Jackie's jigsaw space, and I reckon there's a good couple of weeks' work still in that. But that's fine because there's only us two in the house. I think one of the things that people shared in their comments was their anxiety about moving into a smaller house for the occasions when you are entertaining. And we had to do a lot of thinking about that, but we did all our planning based on the fact that for 95% of the time, it's just me and Jackie in the cottage. We could plan to have a house that we could entertain large numbers of people, or we could host large Christmas events. But that only takes up a small proportion of each year. And in reality, in what we've got here in this flexible living space, we can take we had 14 people dining here at Christmas. They didn't all sleep here, but we set it up a little bit like a cafe, and it was just so lovely to have people here. And around this table, we can comfortably seat 6, probably 8 people, and it's just a really nice place to sit down, chew the fat and entertain. If we do need any more space, the great flexibility of getting rid of that wall is that we've got a huge amount of space into the lounge area that we can spread the dining surface out, and it just makes for a really, really flexible place that works for us. So for 95% of the time, it's me and Jackie here, but for the 5% of the time when we've got guests and visitors, we can cater for as many people as we wish.
And suddenly we have a really big social dining space. The only problem is we do occasionally have to get guests to bring their own chairs because we cannot store lots of chairs in this tiny cottage. We have got 4 of these stools knocking about that Rich's dad made for us years ago that we do get out and we use if we need to. But yeah, we can entertain quite happily.
And talking of storage space, it's a real challenge in a small house. And I guess we had the benefit of completely renovating this house and building it from the inside out as to exactly how we wanted. But storage was at the forefront of our mind because space is absolutely at a premium in these small cottages. One of our best space-saving cupboards really is the understairs. It is a storage area for everything. It's a bit of a bomb site, but it's organised chaos. But you need somewhere reasonably large to be able to store those larger things like ironing boards, like hoovers. And it is a bit of a dumping ground, but it just, when the door is shut, it gives us that minimalist look and it keeps the clutter out of the way. You might have seen from earlier pictures in the house before we developed it that in this corner was a huge larder. Now, Jackie's mum's advice was to keep that because it was an absolutely invaluable storage space, but it just encroached so much into this room and really took the corner off, which meant that we would not have been able to have the clean lines, but also the dining space, and it just would not have fit. So we are quite happy in the fact that we've got rid of the larder unit and it's just given us space for a nice big fridge freezer.
By knocking down the wall and making it a really big open plan space, one of the things that we were really worried about is that we would open ourselves up to have a very cold space as well, that the downstairs would be really hard to heat. And actually, it's been the opposite. We had the walls double lined with kingspan, so it's been doubly insulated, which has made a big difference because these are cold houses. And we've had a multi-fuel wood burning and coal stove that is just fantastic. We have it on for a couple of hours every night and it just warms all of the downstairs through. And actually it gets that hot that we just have to open the door that goes to the upstairs passage and it sends that heat upstairs as well. So it's actually worked out so much better than we thought it would.
We like to have people up to the cottage quite regularly, and we are normally working on no more than 6 people. So one of the simplest things we had to do was to make sure that we had 6 seats for everyone to sit on in the comfortable lounge area. What we also did by using this sort of contrasting sofa, it just allows us to separate off that space. So we can be sat here talking and chatting while someone else is cooking up there. But there is a little bit of a barrier between the 2 spaces. And on an evening when it's just me and Jackie and the fire, we can make it feel really snug in this much smaller lounge space.
If you're a regular viewer of the channel, you will know that we absolutely love books. Books are our nemesis and they are dotted about all over the house. We, as part of the downsizing process, actually got rid of boxes full of them because we used to have in our study a wall that was just full of books. So we're not doing too bad. We have got a lot less. We need to get a bookshelf in here. It's a short, narrow space, so we've got to try and find something that will fit in here or actually have some bespoke ones made. And we've got a little treasure trove of travel books stored away upstairs. We have 2 adult children. They're in their late 20s, but one of our biggest issues living in such a tiny house is what do we do when they both come and stay with their partners? Quite an easy solution to that. We're quite lucky. We have our VW camper van, so if we have all 6 of us who can live quite comfortably in this cottage. Two of the couples will stay inside, and one of the couples, usually us, will be out in the van. And actually, that makes it quite comfortable. The other solution that we think that we will go for at some point when we can save enough money is to change this sofa into a really nice, comfortable sofa bed. So it does mean that if it's really cold outside, we could fit all 6 people quite comfortably inside the house.
So this is our bedroom, the master bedroom as it were, and unlike many other things in the house, it's absolutely enormous. It was one of the big selling points for us when we looked out of the window and saw the views that were available. But it's an old cottage, so it doesn't really have much built-in storage. We, as part of our downsizing, really rationalised our wardrobe, and we are still doing that. We operate a one-in, one-out system, so if we buy a new t-shirt, then an old t-shirt needs to go. But we try and live really simply. We don't need any work clothes anymore, so you will recognise from the videos that pretty much we wear the same clothes all of the time, and we're quite happy with that. So we've got some built-in wardrobes here where we've got a couple of shelves each. Jackie mentioned downstairs, one of our big problems is our books, and we've got a lot of books here, but nothing compared to what we used to have. They're mainly all our travel books, and I've kept my Simon Scarrow collection because I got them all in hardback and I couldn't let go of them. So they're here for the moment. I don't reread them, so they may well be on their way out. We use a blanket box, which is really useful for loads of spare bedding and things like that. But the best way to store stuff in both bedrooms is underneath the beds. And we have got a series of plastic crates where we can store a variety of things, including what Jackie referred to earlier on in the video, which was more plates and more cutlery, just in case we get more people coming to the house.
We were also really lucky. There is quite a tiny wardrobe space that was built above the stairs here. I mean, as you can see, it mainly is filled with all of our outdoor jackets. We really don't have any dress-up clothes that we would need a wardrobe for. And there's a few shelves there that we can just shove things like our rucksacks and other bags out of the way. So it's a large bedroom. It's quite compact in its use. We have lots of ways of storing things, and it really does work for us.
So it's a 2-bedroom cottage, and this is our spare bedroom. It's a really nice size. It's the spare bedroom, also known probably as a little bit of a multi-use room. It's a bit of a dumping ground sometimes when we have got kit that we need to swap around taking to our lockup, and it mostly serves as our drying room because we haven't got a tumble dryer. That actually is a benefit using this as a drying room because we have the dehumidifier on. We don't put the heater on in here because they're electric heaters and they're really expensive to run, but we know by using the dehumidifier regularly that the room doesn't get damp, and it's a really nice space. My mum sees it as her second bedroom. She likes to come and stay and visit us, and this is her space. So as I mentioned, this room does tend to become the dumping ground. We've just come back from our 5-week skiing trip, and we have at the moment got all of our ski gear in this bag. We've got our boots, our skis, and they need to go to the lockup that we have in a local town. The lockup is only tiny. It houses our winter ski gear in the summer, and it houses our kayak and all of our summer garden furniture in the winter, and we just swap things around as we need to. It just keeps this little bit of clutter out of the house for quite a small amount of money.
So I think this must be one of the smallest bathrooms in the whole of Yorkshire. I think most people's en-suites are bigger than this, but it has everything that we need. It's got a fantastic shower. It's got a tiny little bath that we managed to squeeze in. It's got a nice vanity unit in so that we can squeeze all our products in it, and it works really well for us. We thought we might miss from moving from a big 3-bedroomed house with 3 bathrooms, the ensuite and having a big family bathroom, but actually there's only me and Richard, so for us it's perfect.
Having gone through a renovation project, we still believe that every house has its own little projects, and we have 2 well-renowned projects still to do in this house. We've got our garden, which we're just still not getting on with, and then we've got our outdoor space beyond this door. Now, we probably didn't share this with you in some of our earlier videos, but when we were initially renovating and knocking through, we were thinking about knocking through this space into the outdoor lean-to and extending the kitchen, and that just never really came about. It was going to cost too much money. It's a single skin brick building that is attached to the outside of the house, and it's a little bit damp, it's a little bit cold, but everyone needs somewhere to store their stuff, and someone really wise said to us that you definitely need an outdoor space inside and that's what's beyond this door.
Both of us are really glad that we made the decision not to have this space as part of the house and as part of the kitchen, because I think it would have been really hard for us to keep this bit heated, and there were lots of problems. It would have cost a fortune to get it renovated, but it's a really handy outdoor space inside. There's a big shed in here, which we'll show you some photos of in a minute. It's got our bikes in there, it's got all the gardening tools and different things that we needed when we were renovating the cottage. We are hoping to get a garden shed, so a lot of that can go into the garden shed. There is actually another downstairs, Richard calls it a farmyard toilet, which is in there. It's really damp, it's really mouldy, it's really cold in there, it's not pleasant. We very, very, very rarely use it, only if we've been gardening outside and our boots are covered in mud. And at the moment it's just got lots of stuff stored in there. But we've got big plans for this space. If you took out, or well, not even took out, if we knocked down the whole of this lean-to and had it rebuilt on the same footprint, but actually not having this wall in here, but still having a downstairs toilet, it would actually make the house a lot more usable. This could be a cloakroom with some proper built-in storage ideas that would make a huge difference to how we live our life in this house. This is one of Richard's pride and joy projects. He built himself a little wood store to go in here. We're actually running quite low on wood, so we're going to have to get some more delivered. But yeah, that's a great space for us. Again, if we had this bit renovated and knocked down, we are planning on getting some wood stores in the bottom of the garden. We do use this space as a boot room as well, and Richard built us a little bench here so that we can store the boots underneath. We are constantly coming into the house with muddy boots. We have had laminated flooring put throughout downstairs so that we don't trash any carpets, but we do try and keep the mud in here as much as possible. So hopefully you've enjoyed our little tour around the house and us chatting through some of the practicalities of living in what is a much smaller downsized space to what we were used to.
There are loads of pros and also cons of downsizing, and in terms of practicalities, there's always going to be some sort of compromise when you're moving from a large living space down to a much smaller living space. But we think there are solutions to that.
One of the biggest pros for us since moving into this house is that we've realised just how much more economical it is to live in such a small space. It's really easy and quick to heat with our wood burning stove. The council tax is so much cheaper. It's about £100 a month cheaper than it was in our big 3-bedroomed house in Cheshire. The bills are so much smaller, and we find that we just live a really economical life in this space.
The next one, I'm not sure whether it's a pro or a con. By living in a smaller space, it's very, very easy to get cluttered up and messed up. But the benefit of living in a small space is it's so quick and easy to tidy, and it's really quick and easy to clean because there's so little space.
Moving to this much smaller house really forced our arm. We had to declutter and get rid of so much stuff. But what we did find is a lot of the clutter that was in our big 3-bedroomed house was stuff that had been in cupboards or in the loft for years, and actually a lot of the stuff, probably even decades, it was stuff that we didn't need. It was stuff that was just there, and actually now we've just got this really small, beautiful cottage that's just full of clean lines and no clutter.
And there was that ultimate finality of it in the fact that when we were moving out from the large house down into this smaller property, there was just not space for it, so we had to get rid of it. And once you actually get going on that decluttering cycle, it's not actually as difficult as you think. The hardest thing is just getting started.
And what I really like about the cottage now, there is quite a lot of stuff that's probably hidden and stashed in cupboards, but everything has its own place. And like Richard said, it's really easy to clean up after ourselves if it does feel like it's getting a bit cluttered. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Another pro for us, and it's probably to do with our lifestyle, is the fact that the property is very much a lock up and leave property. Well, I would say a lock up and leave property, but actually as soon as we leave and go on our travels and our adventures, our kids or our family tend to move in because it's in the Yorkshire Dales. It is very holiday cottage like, and all our family love coming up here, visiting us, obviously, but they also like to visit the cottage and use it as a holiday home. So it's filling two purposes. We know that the house is really safe, and we also know that our family are really happy to visit here and to use the cottage when we're not here.
So we've had a really good think. Obviously, we are very pro downsizing and moving to this cottage. We absolutely love it. But there's perhaps a few little cons that sometimes sort of creep up on us. As we said, it's great if we've got us and our 2 children and their partners as a family. It will comfortably fit us all, particularly if we use the camper van. But if any of the extended family want to come and visit as well, it's a really tight space. One of the solutions to that, apart from using the camper van for sleeping, is that we live in a village in the Yorkshire Dales and there are lots of Airbnbs around. So we had a really wonderful Christmas a couple of years ago when we first moved here, and all of my family rented some of the cottages that are dotted around the village, and it was quite nice. We had a little sort of merry-go-round of spending Christmas week just visiting the different cottages. It was lovely that everyone wanted to come and spend time with us in the Dales.
And one of the things I would go back to is the fact of what is the sole purpose of the property that you're thinking about moving into. And for 90% of the time, it's just me and Jackie living here. And for 10% of the time, it's when we're entertaining other people. And you can't buy a property for just that 10%, or that's the way we view it. You have to buy the property for the 90% of how you're going to use it. And in our case, that's us too.
And actually in the summer, it's not as much of an issue because we were really pleasantly surprised within our budget that we could get a cottage that's got a garden. So we can entertain in the garden in the summer, which is a bit better.
A number of comments that we had on our last video was associated with the feeling of selling the family home from underneath your children and maybe how your children perceive that. And we've been really lucky. Our kids have been really supportive of our move to the Dales and also our downsizing. I mean, we are quite fortunate because they're in their late 20s, they're in stable relationships, and they're both house owners. So they're probably, fingers crossed, won't be the need for them to come back in emergencies, but they know that there is always a space for them, and we were never going to buy a one-bedroom flat somewhere, so we always wanted space for the kids. But that is a very real anxiety for some people. It's just that it hasn't really affected us in that way.
And another consideration that came up quite a lot in the comments were from people that felt the real heart wrench of selling a family home that you might have lived in for 30 years. You've brought your children up there. Your children have got all of those memories associated with the home. Our children were quite sad when we sold the family house in Cheshire, but they did realise that practically it made no sense for us to keep it and to stay living in such a big house. And they also knew that we wanted to move to Yorkshire, we wanted to live in the Dales, we wanted to be closer to Richard's mum. So they also knew practically that we were making the right decision. And the other thing was, actually, and we don't know why, we can't put our finger on it, we were never massively attached to the family home in Cheshire. We'd lived there for over 20 years. It was a really good home to bring the children up in. It was in a modern estate, it had lots of their friends living there, it had a park close by, it had really good schools. We did enjoy living there, but we weren't heartbroken to sell the property either. We love this cottage, we fell in love with it the moment we came into it. In fact, it's the only place we looked at when we were doing our house search. It's the only house that we came and physically came inside.
Yeah, and we just see this next sort of chapter of our life as an exciting new chapter. And it's not that we didn't value our time in the family home, because we did, and we've got all those associated memories. But that's what they are, they're memories, and they will stay with us anyway. Whereas now we are living a new chapter, and an exciting chapter, and a chapter that our kids are happy with as well, which is really important for us.
So hopefully we've answered some of your questions that people came up with when we did our last downsizing video. And this was perhaps more of a video about the practicalities of what it was like and what it is like living in a much more confined space than we were used to.
So if you've got any questions that we perhaps haven't answered, then we would love to engage with those in the comments. That is one of the things that we love about putting these videos out. And if there is anything that you think that we could learn from perhaps your experiences, then let us know, because we're not the finished article and we've always got something to learn. But we hope you've enjoyed the video, and that's it from us. So see you later. Bye.
Bye.